It can cause us to attach to thought processes that lead to anxiety, sadness, or maybe pain because our internal environment was molded, shaped in a way that seeks external validation. When we depend on external validation to love us back, we are consistently handing over our power to others. Hey yogis, earthlings, misfits. Hello everybody. Welcome back to the Modern Yogi Podcast. I hope you have enjoyed the little mini series on Reiki. Reiki 101, Reiki 102. I've heard from a few of you saying that you want more info, more stuff, more content on the chakras and crystals, and that's coming. That is totally coming. If you haven't listened to those mini series, Reiki 102, the one where I interview a Reiki master, comes with a freebie, so tune into that if you want to. But today, I was reviewing and rewriting a chapter on samadhi, and I'm writing this chapter for my yoga studies folks at UNC Wilmington. And if you don't know, samadhi is the last limb of Patanjali's 8 limbs of yoga. If that means nothing to you, which that's fine, samadhi can kind of translate to enlightenment or bliss, or sama means same or equal, and di means to see. So to see that we are the same and equal. Samadhi, it's the yogi's ultimate path, is to experience samadhi. And I really struggle in teaching this limb for a few reasons. One, if you don't know already, I am not enlightened. I know that's just a big shocker. Number 2, my mind tells me, who in the bloody hell are you to teach this chapter about enlightenment? Who are you? Who gave you the permission to do this? Who gave you the keys to drive this car? Kind of how dare you? Almost like that imposter thing. And that, my friends, number 2, is my ego talking. And that got me thinking. That got me researching. And that got me contemplating that I need to cover the ego, this thing that runs the show, before I talk about samadhi or enlightenment. Let's go over the ego, shall we? So you've been to a few or maybe many yoga classes and you are hooked. Somehow you feel better, kinder, more connected to yourself and those around you. Your friends view you as a hippie now, and your parents, well, they think it's a phase. Regardless, when you are on your mat, you are home. Yoga teachers and students, come learn how yoga can help you navigate the daily grind, breakups, your anxiety from a place of clarity and compassion. Welcome to the Modern Yogi Podcast, hosted by me, Laura Siljander. Misfits, earthlings, yogis, take a deep breath, check in to see how you're doing, body, mind, and soul, because you have arrived. Ego. All right, so we all have an idea of like what the ego is-ish. When I say ego, something comes to your mind. And maybe like, I don't know what that is exactly, but I've heard about it. But if you want a definition of the chat we're going to have today, this is kind of how I'm framing ego, is the way our mind makes sense of our world. So the way our mind makes sense of our world. The ego tries to make sense of our past experiences to protect us for our present and future experiences. So the ego is how our mind makes sense of our world, and the ego tries to make sense of our past experiences. This could be from childhood, this could be from 5 minutes ago, to protect us in the now and to protect us in the future. Here is an example. Let's say you're a small kiddo and you come home, and the only way you can really get approval or words of affirmation or physical touch or that feeling of acceptance and love towards your caregivers or your parents is when you brought home a good grade. And so perhaps your ego says, all right, so you got to get really good grades, and then your parents will show you attention, and that will in turn make you feel good and loved and appreciated and accepted and safe. So that could mean that you need to achieve these A's. You need to achieve to feel love. So that is how your ego is making sense of your world. It's saying, if you want to feel loved by them, you got to do X, Y, and Z, and then they're going to give you the words of affirmation, great job, or the hug, or the pat on the back, or hey, if it's quality time, maybe they'll spend time with you, or if you feel loved by getting gifts, maybe they buy you something because you got an A or gave you money, and you're like, yes, I feel the love. And so this achievement, this, I need to have good grades, I need to work really hard and tell them about it, and that way I will feel love. That's the ego kind of putting that together. That's our mind putting stuff together. Because if you think about it, we spend a lot of time wanting to feel accepted and loved by ourselves, by our spouses, by everyone around us, our family, our friends, our community. No one wants to feel shunned. So we do things to feel good, to feel loved, to feel accepted. I guess if we want to get vulnerable here, which, hey, here it goes. I learned probably around a teenager about my body and realizing the power of the female body and what power you can achieve by putting on tight clothes in a tight female body that has the curves in all the right freaking ways, whatever. The response that I got when I wore certain things gave me power. That made me feel like I had control. The way my ego made sense of this is when you dress like this is the attention that you'll get, and you feel stronger when you get it. That was the way my ego made sense of it. When I walked out with a messy bun and sweatpants and no makeup, it didn't feel as powerful as when I put on the miniskirt, the tube top, the high heels, the makeup, the hair. That's when I felt like I had the most quote unquote control. That's how my ego made sense of that whole circumstance. That's how my mind made sense of the world. And if I wanted to feel like I had power, then I had to dress this way. Maybe both of these examples don't really ring home true to you, but if you just look at even the way that you're acting or what you're wearing or what you'll wear when you walk out of your house, that can all be wrapped up in your ego. I want to show the world that I don't give a rat's. So you throw up the messy bun, you put on your yoga pants and no makeup, and you're like, this is how I want to portray myself to the world. Why? Your ego has made sense of that somehow. Now, I'm not here to say like ego's right and wrong, but I just want to point out this thing that really runs the show that we are not very aware of or isn't really talked about that much. We are incredibly intelligent and adaptive beings. We can adapt. We are smart. When we receive praise for something that our ego says, this feels good, let's do that again. When I felt power, when I wore those certain items and, dressed up my body in that way, it felt good. My ego said, that feels good. When you brought home a good grade to your parents and they said, awesome job, and you felt validated, that felt good. The ego says, yes, continue to do this. This feels good to you. But when we receive criticism for something, we also learn. Our ego says that feels bad, or that rejection hurt, or I didn't feel heard. Our ego learns and says, I don't like this feeling. How can we avoid this? I want to keep you safe. How can we keep you feeling good, for better or for worse? But I want to keep you safe. So here's an example of that. When I don't speak up, when my boundaries feel like they've been violated, maybe I'm partaking in that I am a doormat mentality. This could be because in the past, as a kiddo or as a teenager, that your voice was ignored or denied. So we show up in the world not conscious of this, and we are quiet, and we are often walked all over. And this is how our ego protects us from rejection. Maybe as a kiddo or as a teenager, you weren't validated, you were ignored. And so you thought, okay, I'm just going to listen. I'm not going to speak up too much. And then my ego says, this is going to protect me. See how that works, for better or for worse? We learn very quickly, and we learn what feels good quickly and what doesn't feel good quickly. The ego runs the show. Which is a really scary thing. The ego can run the show with what you eat, what you wear, what you say, what you don't say, with the friends that you have, why you let certain things go, why you hold on to certain things, why you're anxious. Man, the ego, if it goes just like wild and untamed and we have no idea what's happening behind the scenes where our ego is trying to keep us safe, thank you, but sometimes it doesn't work out so well. Just like this whole doormat mentality. I was ignored as a kid, so now either two things can happen. I want to scream my truth and get angry about it, or I'm not going to say anything at all because the ego is trying to protect you. So again, when the ego goes unnoticed, we suffer. It can cause us to attach to thought processes that lead to anxiety, sadness, maybe pain, because our internal environment was molded in a way that seeks external validation. Let me say that again. It can cause us to attach to thought processes that lead to anxiety, sadness, or maybe pain, because our internal environment was molded, shaped in a way that seeks external validation. When we depend on external validation to love us back, we are consistently handing over our power to others. Going back to the example of maybe you don't speak your truth and you feel like a doormat sometimes and you just for some reason can't find the words. Our egos maybe is saying, we don't speak the truth. We won't live in our truth because that is way too dangerous. Way too dangerous. The reaction could be, you're weird. I don't accept you. And this is the stuff the ego is trying to protect us from. If we don't speak our truth or live our truth, because people may think you're super strange. You're a misfit. I don't really accept what you have to say. That hurts. That causes pain because we've handed over our validation, our truth to something else, something outside of us. Do you see where I'm going with this? The ego's trying to protect us, but at the same time, it's running the show. Okay, again, I'm not here to beat up on the ego. On the contrary, I want you to completely become one with your ego. When we become more and more aware of our ego, we can make decisions based on our own truth, our own authentic expression. We're no longer relying on external validation. We're no longer relying on our ego trying to keep us safe because we're aware of our ego. We know the stories behind our ego. We know why it's trying to keep us safe, and I'll get into more ways of how to do this a little bit later on. But the more we can actually become aware of what our ego is trying to say, the more we can act from this authentic space. We know why we feel certain ways. We know why we choose certain friends. We know why we drive the cars that we have. We know why we are hurt by certain people. We know why we are hurt by certain situations. My paradigm crash came when we become fully aware of the ego, fully aware. We let go of all these labels that we are given, all of these labels that the earth has given, like your gender and what you're supposed to look like, and if you're an athlete or a student, or what your career is, or where do you live. When we get rid of all of those labels that were given to us and we become fully aware of the ego, I believe that this is when we could experience bliss or enlightenment, samadhi. But let's bring this back on an everyday basis. We need to become aware of our unconscious ego, such as the next time you feel anxious or some sort of inner conflict or conflict with a person, you can ask, what is my ego trying to tell me? What story is my ego pulling from? What story is coming up? What is that story? What is that story? So you feel anxiety about a certain thing and you're like, why do I feel like this? Ego, what are you trying to protect me from? Okay, let's say I'm feeling really anxious because I really want to try something new. Let's say I really want to try Pilates. And you're like, I don't know if I want to walk into a room of a bunch of women in their tight clothes, knowing all the poses, and I know nothing. I know nothing about Pilates except for it gets me in good shape. And then you're like in this inner conflict, you're like, do I go to the class? Do I not go to the class? And you don't go to the class because the ego is trying to keep you safe and it says, no, just stay home. Watch the Netflix. Eat the chocolate, you're good, you're safe here. But let's say you were like, okay, ego, what are you trying to teach me? And you're like, well, maybe I'm fearful of failure, of looking stupid, because looking stupid doesn't feel good. Maybe I know that the ideal Pilates body is not something that I have, so that's holding me back. Ego, what's coming up for that? Maybe you were made fun of as a kid for your body, or maybe you never felt like your body looked quite right. So maybe all of these little unconscious little stories that we've told ourselves are driving us back. We can't even go to a Pilates class without feeling anxious about it. This could be going to a party. This could be trying a new hobby. Dang, this could just be asking someone out on a date because you're fearful of your rejection, and ego says, just don't even do it. Don't even do it. So the first step is, okay, what are you trying to tell me? What story am I coming up with? What story? A good personal example of when I started this podcast was my ego goes, oh, Laura, who are you to write this chapter on samadhi? That was my ego trying to keep me safe. Who are you to try to talk about this really intense topic about enlightenment and bliss? Who are you? That's my ego saying, stay safe, stay small, stay small. What story was coming up for me? Well, I follow all these yoga greats on social media platforms and I really look up to them and I want to take this practice really seriously. And so that feeling of I got to get this right, it's got to be perfect, was holding me back. It's holding me back. That was my ego trying to keep me safe. Thank you. But you're also holding me back, ego. The next thing you can think of is, if I were to believe this, how would I react? If you were to buy into you're too fearful to go to a Pilates class, you wouldn't go. You'd, like I said, stay on the couch, you'd watch your Netflix, and you'd hang out. If I was too fearful to write my chapter on samadhi and help start a yoga studies minor, I wouldn't have done any of this. Wouldn't have done any of it. Maybe you would procrastinate. Maybe you wouldn't even start in the first place. And then after that, when you are like, this is the story it's trying to tell me, this is the thing it's trying to keep me safe from, there is such freedom and liberation from saying, I acknowledge that, but that ain't working for me no more. That story is not helpful. It's not working for me. I'm going to commit to change, to trying this a different way. You may feel vulnerable and awkward, but these uncomfortable steps are what it takes to grow, to learn, and to create a new way to live your life. Is to say, this ain't working. I want to go a different way. And then you get into the whole, oh shit, this is scary. Now I'm coming face to face with what my ego is trying to protect me from. I could seriously get hurt and fail right now. That is when you have to step into that bravery. That is when you have to step into that being gentle with yourself. When that ego that has gone unnoticed, flying underneath the radar, keeping you safe, when that veil lifts and the ego becomes more in your forefront in your mind, you can hopefully start to let those stories that your ego came up with float away. Let it go, man. It ain't helping anymore. It is holding you back. Now you can make the choice that is authentic to you. You can come from a place of authenticity, no longer just hiding in the shadows, fearful with your ego. Set yourself free. And the way to do that is just to become aware of that creepy story it's telling you, that annoying story it's telling you, and say, this isn't working for me anymore. I want to try a new way. I may fail, but I'm going to be brave. I'm going to try it. And then sometimes you have the, oh shit, this is happening moment, and you push through. I remember my 20s, I ran from that. In my 30s, I'm embracing it a little bit more. The, oh shit, okay, let's go. I'll figure it out as I go. I'm going to be brave. I'm going to be gentle. I can fall, but I'm going to be brave because I really don't want to play it safe. You know that, like, you can't teach old dog new tricks, or how an old person's just set in their own ways? Well, that's because as soon as you stop growing, as soon as you stop learning and exploring yourself, man, something inside of you died. And I'm asking you to be brave and to step out into that light, which is scary. You're going to have that oh shit moment when you jump and you're hoping that your parachute is going to be there. This doesn't happen overnight. This is a practice. It takes intentional thinking. And when this shit hits the fan, internally or externally, bravery, gentleness, compassion, courage, you got to have it. You got to have it. You got to give yourself some space for that, some healing for that. And this is where I stay for the bulk of the time when I meet with my clients. What stories are coming up that trap you in this old mindset that isn't working? You stay here for a long time because it's hard to let them go sometimes. It's hard to shift that mental process, that mindset, that this is how I've always been. That's tough. That takes time to unravel and untie. It's like this when your headphones get into like a big knot. That's your ego. And you're slowly unknotting it one thing at a time, and it's really complicated, but you're doing it intentionally. You're taking your time. You're being patient. You're being brave. You're going to go for it. That is ego, people. That's the way I think about the ego. That could be helpful for you, of what patterns, what's coming up for you, what is holding you back into old mindsets, stuff that's not working anymore, stuff that's holding you back that doesn't have to hold you back. Run that marathon. Try that new hobby. Take singing lessons. Apply for that job. Ask her out. What is your ego holding you back from? This could even be, I want to dress the way I want to dress. I want to live where I want to live. I want to be free from these chains and shackles. All right, hope that was helpful. That was the ego for you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Practice that compassion with your mind, especially with this ego work. Please practice compassion with your speech, maybe less criticism, maybe a little less gossip, and practice compassion with those actions. Get that sleep, drink that water, garbage in, garbage out, y'all. Namaste, Pura Vida, and Shalom. So you want a little bit more. You can follow me on Instagram at practice_compassion or go to my website, laurasoljander.com. A bunch of this content from this episode came from the holistic psychologist. She is a doctor in psychology. She is the bomb. You can follow her too. Also, Brene Brown, thank you. So that's the resources for this pod. I'll talk to you next week.